The rain was falling in thick, endless sheets, swallowing the city in a dull roar. Emma tightened her coat and held the leash of her guide dog, Milo. Every step on the soaked pavement echoed with the rhythm of her kintap paws. Tap. The sound had become her way of seeing. She had learned to live without light. She taught children who were like her, who painted with sound, who recognized colors by temperature, who knew that silence could be warm. But that night, silence wasn't kind. It was heavy, pressing against her chest, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. She was only 2 blocks away from her apartment when she heard it. A piano? Soft at first, carried by the rain, but unmistakable. The melody was fractured, halting like someone trying to remember a forgotten song. Her breath caught. That song? It was his song. Ethan had written it for her on the night of her 25th birthday, saying, "If someday you can't see me, follow this melody. It'll lead you home." Her cane slipped from her hand. She didn't even notice. Milo barked softly, confused. Emma stepped closer to the sound, her heart beating faster with every note. The rain blurred everything, her hair, her tears, her memory of what was real. The music was coming from the old cafe across the street, the one that had been closed for years since the accident. She hesitated at the doorway. Her fingers traced the woodruff, damp and unfamiliar. But when she pushed the door, it creaked open like it had been waiting. The air inside smelled of dust and rainwater. She followed the sound slowly, carefully, her hands brushing against tables and chairs that had long forgotten laughter. The piano was near the window. She could feel the vibration of the notes through the floorboards, each key pressing straight into her chest. "Hello," she called softly. The music stopped. For a moment, only rain answered. Then she felt it, something warm on the piano bench. A handprint. Fresh. Her trembling fingers touched the piano lid. It was wet, as if someone had just been playing in the rain. Her tears fell, landing on the cold keys, blending with the water. "Ethan," she whispered. Her voice broke. "If this is a dream, please don't wake me up." Outside, the thunder rolled. Inside, the light above her flickered once, twice, then died completely. Only the sound of her heartbeat remained. And somewhere in that silence, she could still hear the echo of his final words. "I'll find a way back to you, even if you never see me again." Her fingertips trembled over a circle of cool metal, and the past like a hidden door swung open. The next morning smelled of wet sidewalks and chalk dust. Emma arrived early at the institute, the old brick building that had learned to hold sorrow without breaking. In the music room, she set her bag down, ran her palm over the piano lid that still remembered last night's rain, and took a breath long enough to count her pulse back to even. "Morning, Milo," she whispered. The shepherd thumped his tail twice against the bench. Children's voices began to trickle down the hallway steps, laughter, the gentle percussion of canes against tile. Emma put on the day like a soft, familiar coat. "Good morning, everyone," she said when the room was full. "Find your places by touch, not habit." There were 9 students in this class. Some were born into darkness. Others had arrived here carrying their last sunrise, inside a memory they could not put down. Emma greeted each by voice and scent and microrhythm, the little things sighted people never learned to see. "Today," she said, "we're going to talk about texture in sound. How wood feels different from metal, even when you can't touch it. You can hear that." A small, new voice spoke from the door. "Miss Emma." She recognized the sound that enters a room before the person does, hesitant, careful, bright at the edges. "You must be Lucas." A pause, a shy breath. "Yes, ma'am. Come in. To your left, 2 steps down. There's an empty chair. Milo's tail will show you where." The dog obliged, giving a single wag that thumped the chair leg. Lucas took a seat. His clothes smelled faintly of rain and lemons, the kind of detergent that promised a fresh start. Emma went on with the lesson, letting his presence fit into the room like a note that had been waiting for its chord. They listened to woodwinds, to brass, to a triangle that rang like a distant star pinned to a winter sky. They clapped rhythms back to each other. Emma taught them a piece she had written years ago, a simple melody that drew a straight path through a crowded street. The children followed, stumbling and then finding their feet. She was passing among them when something brushed her wrist. A cool touch, a quick apology. Sorry, Lucas murmured. It's okay, she said, and then the world stopped. Her fingers had grazed a circle of metal on his wrist. Not just any metal, this one held a temperature of memory. The band was narrow, hand-bent, a notch imperfect, near the clasp. Under the skin of the metal, she could feel an engraving, shallow, not cut by a machine. Lucas, she said carefully, may I touch your bracelet, just for a second? He hesitated. Mom says I shouldn't take it off. You don't have to take it off. Just, let me feel it with my fingertips. A beat. Then a small wrist nudged her palm. Emma traced the band slowly, map-making the edges of the past. There on the underside 2 letters, EE, not printed, etched. A line slightly crooked, like someone had cut it while laughing. Ethan had always joked that he couldn't engrave straight to save his life. Good thing my heart's better at lines than my hands, he would say. Emma swallowed. The room hummed with the breath of children. She picked up her teacher voice and set it gently back into the world. Thank you, Lucas. That's beautiful work. He made a small sound of agreement. It was my dad's. Mom says he made it for her when they met. She let me wear it on the first day so I won't be scared. The air thinned, like the world had been lifted a few inches out of reach. Your dad made jewelry? Emma asked, careful, not to open the door too quickly. Sometimes, he said. Mostly, he built small things that talk. Mom says he liked to make the inside of things sing. A laugh rose and broke in Emma's chest. Ethan's hands were always busy inventing comfort. He had been designing a tactile haptic bracelet for her students, a piece that could listen to the room and translate space into a private language of pulses, a way home that fit on your wrist. Emma finished class on muscle memory. The children filed out, carrying the triangle's bright star, wooden flutes, the soft brass echo. Lucas lingered, fingertips counting the buttons on his backpack. Miss Emma, he said. Is it okay if I come early tomorrow? The hall gets loud and I forget which door is ours. Of course, she said. Count the second door after the radiator. Or follow the smell of lemon, clean a rhyme. Always the one who spills it. He laughed, small and true. Thank you. As his steps faded, Emma sat at the piano and placed both hands on the keys. She did not press down. She merely held them, feeling the possibility tremble under her fingers like a bird about to know the sky. Milo, she whispered. The dog rested his chin on her knee. She put the bracelet on the map of her memory. Ethan at the kitchen table with a file and a grin. A circle never gets lost, he had said. It just keeps coming back to where it began. Her phone vibrated. A calendar alert, appointment Dr. Evans, 4 p.m. ophthalmology. She had moved this appointment twice. The darkness in her left eye had been thickening at the edges, like night creeping over the sea. She did not want to give the darkness a name, because names made things sit down and stay. She walked to the hospital later, with Milo pacing the weather of her steps. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and plastic plants. A television murmured about a storm moving up the coast. Nurse Avery called her name. Paper moved. Shoes whispered. Dr. Evans will be right with you. Emma sat on the edge of the exam chair and listened to the room find its stillness. She counted the sounds. Vent, monitor, someone's pen ticking impatient time in the next bay. A knock-knuckle soft. Miss Carter. A man's voice, mellow as copper warmed by sun. The cadence was careful, unobtrusive, like a musician entering a song already in progress. I'm Dr. Evans. The word Evans struck something in the back of her mind, a rung of a ladder she hadn't climbed in years. Not Ethan, she told herself. Evans. The difference mattered. Names mattered. Hi, she managed. He moved like water around a stone quietly, with gentleness. Gloves whispered. Instruments clicked into place. The chair reclined by an inch that felt like a mile. I've read Dr. Patel's notes, he said, the paper's edge knocking softly against his stethoscope. We'll do a few tests. I'll narrate before I touch. You're in charge. If anything feels like too much, we stop. Most doctors said the right words without putting their hands where the words lived. This one meant it. Emma could hear the permission settle into the room like a blanket. Okay, she said. Light flowed against her pupil, a river she could not see, but still felt. He moved his hand near her face, and something in the space changed. The air remembered a shape she had known once under a different sky, the angle of a cheek, the pause at the end of an exhale, that unteachable rhythm of a person who had learned to listen first. "How long have you noticed the shadow?" he asked softly. "Since spring. It keeps widening." A hum of thought in his throat. "We'll image the retina. There are options. We'll take this one shore at a time. One shore at a time." Ethan used to say that about impossible days. When the scans were done, Emma sat up slowly. Paper crackled under her palms. Dr. Evans rolled the stool closer. The wheels translated inches into intimacy. "Miss Carter," he said, and paused like a man looking for a bridge before he crossed. "It's progressing, but not beyond hope. I'd like to talk about surgery, not today, not even this month, but soon. You deserve more than the dark is giving you." His voice dipped at the edges the way Ethan's had when trying to soften a hard sentence. It was not the same voice, not the same man. But there was a resonance that found a chord already strung across her bones. He stood, set something on the metal tray with a quiet ring, a bracelet width of sound, and then picked it up again. The tiny accidental music pricked her skin. "Sorry," he said. "Old habit. I fiddle with small things when I'm thinking." Emma felt the floor lift half an inch. "Do you?" The question tried to run ahead of her courage. "Do you have a brother?" Silence, but not empty, more like the moment before rain admits it's coming. He exhaled. "I did," he said. A gate closed gently in his voice. "We lost touch a long time ago." She pressed her hands flat to her thighs before the tremor could announce itself. "Thank you, doctor." On the way out, his voice followed, quiet as a benediction. "Second door on your left. Elevator button has a chip smooth bottom, textured top. Your dog is very good at pretending he's not proud of you." Emma smiled, despite the ache. "He's terrible at hiding pride." Outside, the storm had returned, a patient guest, refusing to take the hint. She stood in the entryway and listened to the city turn its pockets inside out for the rain. Somewhere, a piano lived in the throat of the weather. Somewhere, a boy wore a bracelet that had come back to the world. She wrapped her hand around the cane, not too tight, and stepped forward. If a circle never gets lost, she thought, then perhaps love doesn't either. It just keeps returning until someone finally opens the door. The world smelled of paper and rain. Emma sat by the window of the teacher's lounge, a cup of coffee cooling between her palms. Beyond the glass, the campus blurred into wet silhouettes. Children's laughter, somewhere far down the hall, tangled with the soft thud of canes on the floor. For days, her mind had been circling that bracelet the way the metal remembered warmth. The crooked engraving, the impossible coincidence. She had run her fingers over every inch of memory, searching for a flaw, a rational explanation. But love, she realized, had always lived outside reason. A knock at the door. "Miss Emma." It was Lucas, standing just inside the threshold. He always paused there first, as if testing the air for permission. "You can come in," she said, smiling. "You don't need to ask every time." "I like asking," he murmured. "It feels polite." He shuffled closer, the rhythm of his steps half counting, half hoping. Milo lifted his head in recognition and gave one soft bark. "I was practicing," Lucas said, holding up a small wooden recorder. "The one you gave me. Let me hear." He lifted it to his lips and played. The notes came slow, uncertain, but familiar. The melody tripped over itself, then found balance, rising into something that made Emma's breath catch. It was Ethan's melody again, the one she had heard in the rain. Her pulse stumbled. "Where did you learn that song?" Lucas hesitated. "It was on my mom's phone. She said Dad used to play it for me when I was little, so I listen to it sometimes. It helps me sleep." Emma's throat tightened. "Do you know what it's called?" He shook his head. "No name. Just, track 07. Track 07. Ethan's habit. He never named his drafts until a song was finished. He had once joked that track 07 was cursed, because it always ended up being the one he never completed. Emma forced a smile. "It's beautiful. You play it well. Can I ask something?" Lucas said quietly. When you listen to music, do you see colors? I used to, Emma said. Now I just feel them. The soft ones are close to my heart. The bright ones stay a little further away. He nodded like he understood something adults often forgot. Mom says Dad felt colors too. He said blue sounded like a promise. Her breath left her in a single, shaking laugh. He said that to me once. Lucas tilted his head. Did you know him? The room seemed to tilt, slow as a tide. I might have. He touched the bracelet absent-mindedly. Mom said he built this when he started losing his hearing. That he wanted to feel sound instead of hear it. He called it Project Echo. Project Echo. Emma's world froze. That was Ethan's project, the same prototype she had seen him sketching on napkins. The one he swore would let people touch music. Lucas, she said softly. Do you remember your dad's full name? He smiled, proud to know. Ethan Evans. Her hand slipped from the table. The coffee cup tilted, spilling warmth across her fingers, but she didn't move. Ethan Evans. She had never known his last name. He used to joke that Ethan's enough. She'd never questioned it. Now it pressed against her chest like a forgotten heartbeat. Lucas frowned. Are you okay? She blinked hard. Yes. I remembered something. The bell rang. Children's voices filled the hallway again. Lucas waved, a little uncertain. See you tomorrow, Miss Emma. Tomorrow, she echoed. When he was gone, Emma leaned back and pressed her palms to her face. The scent of coffee and rain mixed with the ache in her chest. Project Echo. Ethan Evans. The bracelet. All the missing notes finally found their chord. She opened her old phone and scrolled to a folder she hadn't touched in years. Voice memos. Her fingers hovered over one file. Ethan_prototype_demo07.mp3. She pressed play. Static. Then a familiar hum. Testing 1, 2. Emma, if you're hearing this, it means I figured out the feedback problem. The bracelet can now translate rhythm into tactile frequency. Each pulse equals. His laugh interrupted the explanation. God, listen to me. Talking like an engineer. You're probably rolling your eyes. Anyway, if it works, you'll be able to feel the melody, even if a pause. Even if you can't hear me anymore. The file ended in static and silence. Emma pressed the phone to her chest. For a moment she could almost believe he was still on the other side of the sound, waiting for her to answer. Outside, the rain had started again, tracing faint lines down the window. And in every drop, she could hear his echo, the sound of a promise that refused to die. The world outside had turned silver with rain again. Inside, the music room smelled faintly of dust, paper, and the ghosts of unfinished songs. After class, when the last student's footsteps faded down the corridor, Emma remained by the piano, her fingers tracing the wood as if searching for something that memory had hidden. She opened the drawer beneath the keyboard and pulled out an old notebook. The cover was soft and frayed, the paper inside yellowed around the edges. She had kept it locked away for 5 years, unable to open it since the accident. Tonight, she didn't even remember deciding to. Her hands simply moved, guided by an ache that had become unbearable to ignore. The first few pages were sketches, circuits, notes, times, diagrams of the Project Echo bracelet. She smiled despite herself, imagining him bent over the table, humming as he drew lines that could translate love into vibration. Then she found something folded between the pages. A letter. The handwriting was his. The paper had softened with age and touch, but the words were still sharp enough to cut. Emma, I don't know when you'll read this. Maybe never. I started this letter the day you told me your sight was getting worse. I wanted to build you something that would never let you be lost. But love isn't always a map, it's sometimes a storm that makes you lose the road. If something happens to me, promise me you won't stay in the dark, just because I'm gone. Let the light find you again, even if it remembers my name before yours. When I play our song, I always imagine the rain, translating it for you, each drop a word I never learned to say. Love isn't a place we go back to. It's the echo that stays when everything else disappears. Her eyes burned. She pressed the paper against her chest, and let the tears fall silent necessary. She whispered, You never sent this, Did you? Only the rain answered, drumming its steady, faithful rhythm against the window. Milo nuzzled her leg. Emma wiped her cheeks and forced herself to breathe. The edges of the letter trembled between her fingers. Let the light find you again, even if it remembers my name before yours. She folded the letter back into the notebook, but something else slipped out, a small half-torn photo. Two young men stood side by side, both laughing, both unmistakably identical. Ethan. And another him? At the bottom, scrawled in faded ink, E&A Brothers. Two sides of the same note. E&A Ethan and Aaron. The name scratched faintly at the back of her mind, Dr. Evan. A. Evans. Her hands shook. She picked up her phone, opened her calendar, and clicked on the appointment from yesterday. Dr. A. Evans, Ophthalmology. Her breath caught. She looked again at the photograph, at the eyes of the man standing beside Ethan. Softer, but same shape. Same smile lines. Milo whimpered, sensing the storm rising inside her. Emma stood up, pacing the room as though movement could stop the truth from catching her. But truth was faster. It ran ahead, waiting with open arms. Ethan, she whispered, voice trembling. Did you know? The question had no answer. Only the rain kept time. Her phone buzzed again. A text message from an unknown number. Unknown, Miss Carter. This is Dr. Evans. You left a file in my office. I can drop it off tomorrow if that's easier. Her heart leaped painfully against her ribs. She typed back before thinking. No need. I'll come by. Dr. Evans, are you sure? It's late. Yes. She stared at the screen, thumb hovering, then added, there's something I need to ask you. 3 dots blinked, then vanished. Outside, thunder rolled again, deep and patient. Emma slipped Ethan's notebook into her coat pocket, held the leash in her other hand, and whispered, come on, Milo. The dog stood, tail low but steady, ready to follow her anywhere, even back into the storm. As she stepped outside, the wind tugged at her hair, and for a fleeting second, the city lights blurred into halos through the rain. She could almost hear Ethan's voice inside the downpour, soft, close, almost smiling. You found the letter, didn't you? The moment she heard his voice again, something inside her broke. Not from pain, but from recognition. The hospital was quieter at night, as if the walls were holding their breath. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, washing the hallway in sterile white. The rain outside whispered against the windows, steady and intimate, like someone quietly keeping time. Emma stopped outside the ophthalmology ward, clutching Ethan's old notebook to her chest. Milo padded silently beside her, nails clicking on the tile. Her heart beat so hard she could almost hear it echo through the hall. A nurse looked up from the desk. Miss Carter. Dr. Evans said you might come by. Emma nodded. The words she'd rehearsed dissolved the moment she opened her mouth. He said I left something. Yes, the nurse said kindly. Room 312. He's still in. Emma thanked her, then followed the numbers along the wall. Her cane tapped softly, tap, pause. Tap, each sound measuring the distance between courage and fear. When she reached the door, she hesitated. Her hand found the edge of the frame, cold and real. She knocked once. Come in, a voice answered. Even through the barrier of wood, the sound went straight through her. Calm, gentle, deliberate, like sunlight filtered through water. She opened the door. Dr. Evans was sitting by his desk, sleeves rolled up, reviewing a patient file under the lamp's yellow circle. He looked up immediately. Miss Carter, he said, standing. I didn't think you'd come tonight. I couldn't sleep. Her voice was softer than she expected. And I wanted to thank you. For earlier, he smiled, an expression that felt too familiar. That's what I'm here for. Please, sit. She found the chair by touch and sat, the notebook still clutched in her lap. Milo settled at her feet, sighing. Dr. Evans gestured toward the file on his desk. You left this behind? She heard the rustle of paper and reached out automatically, but when his hand brushed hers, the world narrowed to that single point of contact. His skin was warm, steady, and the faintest tremor, the same one Ethan had when nervous, lived there like a ghost, refusing to leave. Emma drew her hand back, clutching the file. Thank you. Are you feeling better? He asked. Better isn't the same as fine, she said, and surprised herself by smiling. He chuckled softly. True. The sound filled the room low, rich, heartbreakingly familiar. For a moment, they sat in quiet that didn't feel empty. Then Emma said, Dr. Evans, may I ask you something personal? He paused. Of course, do you have a brother? The silence that followed was fragile, almost human enough to breathe. Finally he said, I did. His voice was lower now, careful. His name was Ethan. We were twins. Emma's throat closed. He continued, we were close when we were young. He was the quiet one, the dreamer. I was the one who tried to fix what he broke. He gave a small, self-deprecating laugh that cracked halfway through. But he disappeared years ago. The police found his car after the accident, but never. He stopped. You don't need to hear this. I do, Emma whispered. Dr. Evans exhaled. He used to talk about someone, a girl named Emma. Her breath caught. He talked about me, yes, he said simply. He said she could hear color. He said blue was her favorite because it sounded like hope. Her hands trembled in her lap. I thought he made her up, Evans went on. Until today. The hum of the lights faded beneath the pounding in her ears. Why? She asked. Barely a whisper. Because, he said, you have the same way of listening. Like every sound has a temperature. Emma tried to speak, but words dissolved. She opened the notebook in her lap, fumbling for the folded photo. She handed it toward him. He hesitated, then took it. She heard his breath hitch. Where did you get this? It was in Ethan's notebook, she said. He called it Project Echo. Dr. Evans stared at the photograph. That was the last picture we took together, he murmured. He said one day the world would hear silence the way we do. Something in his tone cracked half nostalgia, half grief. Emma swallowed. He finished it, didn't he? The bracelet. Evans nodded slowly. I think so. I've seen the prototype once. Our mother showed it to me after his death. She said he made it for someone he loved. Tears blurred Emma's sightless eyes. He did. The clock ticked softly. Evans spoke again, voice raw. You remind me of him so much, it hurts sometimes. Emma let out a shaking laugh. He used to say the same thing about you. He blinked, startled. He did, she nodded. He said his twin carried all the light he didn't know how to keep. For a while neither spoke. The rain pressed gently against the window, and the sound filled the spaces between their breathing. Finally, Evans said, Ms. Carter, I've reviewed your scans again. The damaged tissue in your retina is worsening faster than I'd hoped. But there's a surgical option. It's risky, but it could restore partial sight. Emma's fingers tightened around the notebook. Would you be the one to do it? Yes, he said, if you'll let me. She hesitated. And if I see again, what will I find? He smiled sadly. Maybe not what you expect, but maybe something worth seeing. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, I'll do it. He stood, offering his hand. She found it warm and steady. We'll schedule it soon. As he walked her to the door, Emma stopped. Dr. Evans. He turned. If you ever want to know what Ethan left behind, she said, holding up the notebook, you should read this. He met her silence with one of his own. Maybe one day. But for now, I think he left it with the right person. She nodded, unable to trust her voice. When she stepped into the hallway, the rain outside had softened. Milo leaned against her leg, grounding her to the moment. She whispered, He's real, Milo. Ethan was real. And somehow, he's still here. The dog gave a small, approving huff, as if he'd known all along. When he said you'll see again soon, she didn't know whether to be grateful or afraid. 3 days before the surgery, Emma found herself wandering the hospital's garden. It was small, hidden behind the east wing, where the smell of antiseptic faded into damp earth and lavender. Milo walked beside her, leash loose, guiding her around benches and low shrubs. The air felt heavy with late spring rain, and somewhere, wind chimes whispered out of tune. She stopped by the fountain. The sound of water had always calmed her, constant, circular, like time forgiving itself. Do you come here often? The voice came from behind her. She didn't have to ask who it was. Dr. Evans's footsteps were measured, his tone wrapped in that same quiet steadiness that made her both safe and uneasy. "Sometimes," she said, "when I forget what still feels alive." He stepped closer, the gravel crunching beneath his shoes. "You sound like my brother." Emma smiled faintly. "That's becoming a dangerous compliment." He laughed softly, then joined her by the fountain. "I reviewed your case again. We'll operate on Monday morning. I want you to rest this weekend." "Rest?" she echoed. "I forgot how to do that years ago." He hesitated, then said, "Would you like me to explain the procedure? It might help. Maybe later. For now, I'd rather listen to something that doesn't sound like a hospital." Evans was silent for a beat. Then she heard him take something from his coat pocket. A faint metallic clink followed a sound she recognized immediately. The bracelet. He must have felt her body tense. "Don't worry," he said quickly. "It's not Lucas's. This one's mine. I found it among my brother's things." Emma turned her head toward him. "You kept it." "I didn't mean to," he said quietly. "It just wouldn't let go." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain and metal. He added, "Sometimes I wear it when I'm unsure. It helps me remember that uncertainty isn't weakness. It's how we listen." Emma's throat tightened. "That's something Ethan would say." Evans exhaled slowly. "He said it to me first." For a moment, the world seemed to fold into itself, the sound of the fountain, the echo of the bracelet, their breathing rising and falling in unintentional harmony. She wanted to ask 1,000 questions. Did he dream of Ethan too? Did he ever hear his brother's voice in the rain the way she did? But instead she said, "Do you ever feel like he's still here?" Evans hesitated. "Sometimes, in strange ways, when I'm tired, or when music plays from nowhere. Once, I swear I heard him say my name in an empty hallway." He smiled at himself. "You'd think a doctor wouldn't believe in ghosts." "I don't think ghosts are people," Emma said softly. "I think they're unfinished sentences." He looked at her. The pause that followed felt almost sacred. "Maybe that's what we both are," he said. "The unfinished part of him." The words reached her like the first breath after surfacing. "Maybe," she said, voice trembling. "But I think, he left light behind in both of us." Evans said nothing. His hand moved, metal brushing softly against skin. Then a quiet clicked, the bracelet opening. He took her wrist gently, careful as if touching a fragile instrument. "Here," he said. "Let me show you something." He slipped the bracelet onto her arm. It was warm, alive. A second later, she felt it. A pulse, faint but rhythmic, matching her heartbeat. Then, beneath it, another rhythm layered softly in between the pattern of their song. Her lips parted. "It's still working." "It shouldn't be," Evans whispered, astonished. "The power cell's been dead for years." She laughed through a tear. "Maybe it's not electricity." He looked at her, eyes darker now. "Then what is it?" "Memory," she said. "And love?" For a long while, neither of them spoke. The fountain murmured, the bracelet pulsed, and Emma's breath shook like the edge of a candle. Finally, Evans said quietly, "I'm starting to think he meant for me to find you. Or for us to find each other," she replied. Maybe he knew light doesn't belong to just one person. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned his face upward as the first drops of rain began to fall again. Emma tilted her head too, listening. "I love the sound of rain," she said. "It makes me feel less alone." "Then," he said softly, "I hope it never stops." The bracelet's pulse quickened, as though responding. Neither of them noticed that its faint blue indicator, light long thought dead, was glowing again. When the bracelet started to sing, she knew it wasn't memory, it was him. It began in the middle of the night. Emma had been unable to sleep since the rain stopped. The silence felt wrong, too clean, too empty. She lay in her bed with Milo curled against her feet, the hospital bracelet still faintly glowing on her wrist. Every few seconds, it pulsed one heartbeat, then another, then a pause. Like someone knocking, gently, from the other side of time. She turned her wrist, fingertips brushing the engraved edge. "Ethan," she whispered, half ashamed of how easily his name still escaped her lips. The light blinked once in answer. Her throat tightened. No, that's impossible." but the pulse quickened. 3 beats. Stop. 2 beats. Stop. 3 again. She sat up, realizing it wasn't random. It was Morse code. Her heart hammered as she fumbled for her phone, opening a Morse translator app she had used years ago in class. Her fingers followed the rhythm, translating each pulse. E menos a menos M, menos S, menos T, menos I menos L, menos L, menos H, menos I menos R. Emma froze. The bracelet glowed brighter, as though pleased it had been understood. She felt tears gather, hot and unbelieving. You can't be. But the pulses continued. Slow, patient. T menos U menos N, menos T menos B, menos I menos A menos F, menos R menos A. She clutched her wrist, breath shaking. Ethan, what are you? A final pulse. Light, then the bracelet went still. She sat there for a long time, surrounded by silence that didn't feel empty anymore. When her phone buzzed, the sound almost made her cry again. Dr. Evans, are you awake? She hesitated, then typed back, yes. Something's happening to the bracelet. A few seconds later, don't move. I'm on my way. By the time he arrived, Dawn was bleeding pale through the blinds. Evans entered quietly, but his breath came uneven. You said the bracelet reacted. She nodded. It spoke. He pulled a chair closer. Show me. Emma held out her wrist. The light had faded, but as his fingertips touched the metal, the indicator blinked once then twice. A faint hum filled the room, like a radio searching for a forgotten frequency. Evans's brows furrowed. That sound, it shouldn't be possible. The circuitry's passive. It's Morse code, Emma said quickly. It spelled, I am still here. He looked at her, startled. Are you sure? Count it, she said. 3. Stop. 2. Stop. 3 again. It wasn't random. Evans exhaled. Ethan used to encode all his prototypes with debug sequences, little hidden messages that activated when certain frequencies matched his voice pattern. He frowned. But for it to work now, someone or something must have triggered it. Emma's lips trembled. You mean, his voice? Evans didn't answer immediately. He leaned closer to the bracelet, pressing 2 fingers against the side seam. There was a faint click. Then, out of nowhere, a tiny speaker hissed. Static, then a sound. A breath. Aaron Evans went rigid. If you're hearing this, it means the prototype survived the crash. Don't panic. I built redundancy into the signal. It reacts to biometric contact from either of us. If Emma's with you, tell her I kept my promise. Emma's hand flew to her mouth. The voice was unmistakable. The bracelet stores residual resonance. It's not alive, not really. But if it's still glowing, it means memory found light again. And maybe love doesn't end. It just changes form. The recording ended. Evans's shoulders sagged. He knew. Emma could barely speak. He called you Aaron. He nodded, eyes bright and wet. That's my name. He must have known you'd find me. She laughed softly through her tears. He was always one step ahead. They sat there, letting the silence stretch until it became something gentle. Evans whispered. He said if Emma's with you, he knew we'd meet. Maybe he trusted the world to finish what he couldn't. Evans smiled sadly. Or maybe he just believed in circles. Emma looked down at the bracelet again. The blue light flickered faintly, steady like breathing. Do you think it will ever stop? He shook his head. Not until it runs out of what it's remembering. Then maybe it never will. Outside, morning had begun to unfold, washing the hospital in quiet gold. Evans rose, touching her shoulder lightly. Rest. The surgery's tomorrow. Let's make sure you'll see this light for yourself. She smiled through tears. You sound like him when you say things like that. He hesitated at the doorway. Or maybe he sounds like me. When he left, Emma lay back, listening to the bracelet's faint rhythm. A song without sound. A heartbeat that belonged to 2 men. And one promise that refused to fade. As the anesthetist lowered the mask, Emma whispered into the dark. Ethan, if I see the light, remember my name. Morning arrived thin and pale, like paper held up to the sun. Emma sat in the pre-op bay in a cotton gown, the room divided by curtains that turned other people's fear into soft silhouettes. Milo was not allowed past the doors. He had pressed his head against her palm and obeyed when the nurse led him away. She could still feel the phantom warmth of his fur. Dr. Evans's steps announced him even before he spoke, measured, quiet, certain because it had to be. "Good morning," he said, stopping beside her. "How are you feeling?" "Like a door about to be opened," Emma answered. "That's a good feeling," he said. "Doors are what rooms dream of." Paper rustled. Consent forms the ritual that turns risk into language. He narrated every touch, every movement, sterile cap, pressure cuff, a tiny clip on her finger that hummed her pulse into numbers. "It's okay to be afraid," he said. "I am." She found his hand by memory now, not sight. "But I'm more afraid of never knowing. Of staying where everything is. Almost." He squeezed once, the exact way Ethan had done when goodbye had to be small. "We'll start soon. I'll be there the whole time." They rolled her to the operating room. The air changed cooler, cleaner, a hush that wasn't silence so much as attention. Instruments were already speaking to each other in metal syllables. A monitor translated her heartbeat into light. Emma, the anesthetist, said, friendly, distant, "I'll give you something to relax. We'll keep you breathing and steady." A soft mask. Plastic, hand, air. From somewhere near her shoulder, Evans's voice, "You'll hear me. If anything feels like too much, raise your hand and we'll pause." She thought of the bracelet locked in the small locker by her bed, its glow swallowed by folded clothes. She had wanted to wear it, but he'd shaken his head with a smile. "We're superstitious about jewelry in the OR," he'd said, pocketing his own matching band as if tucking a prayer against his heart. "Tell me something true," she said, because fear needed verbs. He hesitated. "When I'm nervous, I hum without realizing." "What do you hum?" "A song my brother wrote and never finished." "Track 07, she said, smiling under the mask. He laughed, and the room felt less like a bright ocean, and more like a boat. The lights shifted above her, shapes she could not see, but their heat and order brushed her skin. The anesthetist's voice dropped lower, a blanket for the mind. Numbers slowed. Boundaries softened. "Stay with me," Evans murmured as the drape went up, as the first sterile touch found the map of her eye, one shore at a time. She followed his voice across the water. Time becomes a different animal in an operating room. Evans moved inside its ribs with practiced care. The microscope lowered. The world shrank to a measured circle of cornea and light. His hands were steady because they had learned to be, because too much life depended on the lie that steadiness is a choice. "Incision," the scrub nurse said, giving him a word that fit his fingers. A breath, a cut so delicate it felt like asking permission. He did not look at the wall clock, but at the metronome of monitors. Emma's pulse, patient but quick. His own, learned to hide. He hummed, no louder than the air conditioner. Not a tune so much as a grammar. The room learned the cadence and settled around it. "Lency," said softly, "viscoelastic." Each step translated years of training into intention. A membrane parted. A cloudy world lifted. The fragile business of making space where Scar had learned to live. Evans remembered the bracelet's tiny voice in the quiet of dawn. "If Emma's with you, tell her I kept my promise." He placed the new lens like a window pane where the house had bricked itself shut. "Light," he said finally. "Let's see what the retina will accept." The fiber optic beam touched her like a fingertip of day. On the other side of the drape, Emma made a small sound, surprise braided with fear. "You're doing well," he murmured. "Almost there." "Is that?" Her voice fluttered. "Is that light?" "Yes," he said, smiling into a space she couldn't yet see. "That's yours." He sealed what needed sealing. He irrigated, smoothed, aligned. The operative field returned to a geometry that the body might forgive. "Shield," he said. A transparent guard settled over her aja, promise of patience. Evan stepped back only when stillness felt earned. He exhaled. The humming left him slowly, like tide unthreading from a shore. "Emma," he said, bending close enough that the microphone of his voice would find her, "we're finished." "How did I do?" she asked, the child in every patient coming to the surface. "As if you've done it before," he said. "As if your eye remembered how to want the day." Recovery smelt of blankets and saline, and the hall's distant coffee. Emma floated in and out of a soft gray that was not darkness but fog. When the world found its edges again, she knew by the weight of the shield and the absence of pain that her body had signed the treaty. Evans was there. He had changed his gown for a real shirt. She could hear fabric different from paper, a sound her fingers longed to learn again. "How long?" she asked. 2 hours since we finished, he said. "No complications." She reached up automatically, his hand intercepted gently, guiding hers to rest. "Not yet," he said with a smile in the word. "We'll remove the shield this afternoon. We want the world to arrive slowly." She nodded, swallowing a bright, ridiculous urge to be brave and small at once. "Stay. I'm not going anywhere." They spoke of meaningless things that meant everything. What rain does to the smell of a city. How Milo pretends not to eavesdrop. Why hospital curtains always sound like distant applause. When she dozed, Evans wrote notes he already knew by heart, then didn't leave anyway. He took the bracelet from his pocket and laid it screen down, on the bedside table. The blue lead winked once, as if acknowledging custody. Hours folded like napkins. A nurse returned with quiet competence. "Ready?" she asked. Emma's hand trembled. "Ready?" Evans moved to her side. "I'll narrate," he said. "We'll take off the shield. There may be blurring, glare, shapes before edges. Let it be messy." The nurse loosened the tape. Adhesive released from skin with the soft, universal sound of endings. The shield lifted. Light arrived. It wasn't a single thing. It was a weather, warmth, pressure, brightness falling through her like bells. Her breath hitched. Her lashes fluttered as if trying to learn their old role. "I see." The words broke, remade themselves. "I see something." "What kind of something?" Evans asked, voice and arm around a shoulder. "Gold," she whispered, surprised by the color's temperature. "And a shape. It moves when you speak." He laughed softly. "That's me failing to stand perfectly still." She cried then, not sorrow, not exactly relief. The kind of crying that bodies do when they return to themselves. "Look down, then up," he coached. "Let the muscles remember. We'll give it time." The world swam, then steady. The brightness crystallized into vague planes, then softer borders. A silhouette resolved. A man, close edges haloed by the room's late afternoon. She blinked hard. The blur shivered, then held. "Evans?" she asked, half breath, half hope. "I'm here." Her focus caught for an instant his eyes, or the idea of them. A color she had once learned by touch. The bridge of a nose she had traced in a different life. A mouth trying not to smile too quickly. The resemblance slammed into her like a remembered tide. Her chest stuttered. "Ethan." The room held its breath. Evans did not move. Did not reach for or away. He let the silence be true. "I'm Aaron," he said finally, gently. "But you're not wrong to see him." Emma shook with a laugh that was not laughter. "You have his everything." "I have his face," he said. "You have his story." She reached toward the blur. He met her halfway, careful, palms mapping back to presence. The bracelet on the table woke, and blinked once blue, then blue again. Emma exhaled. Light remembered. "It did," he said, "and it remembered your name." The nurse stepped back, kind enough to be invisible. The room resumed its human size. "Tomorrow," Evan said softly, professional, returning like a well-worn coat. "We test acuity, adjust drops, schedule follow-up. Today, you let your eye and your heart be new." She nodded, the motion sending tiny constellations dancing through the bright. "Tomorrow," she agreed. "But for now," he prompted. "Stay close," she said. "I can do that." Outside the window, evening gathered its scattered gold. In the small square of table beside them, the bracelet pulsed steady, patient, like a song deciding to finish itself at last. When she finally opened her eyes, the face she saw wasn't Ethan's, but her heart didn't know the difference. The morning after the surgery smelled of coffee, rain, and disinfectant. Light filtered through the blinds like water through lay soft, scattered, forgiving. Emma sat upright on the hospital bed, one hand trembling slightly as the nurse removed the final dressing. Dr. Evans stood nearby, his posture both professional and impossibly human. "Take your time," he said gently. "Let your eyes adjust before you try to focus." She blinked, lashes fluttering against the brightness. The world was a smear, at first blurred shapes, shifting golds and whites. Then, slowly, the haze began to thin. The nurse moved aside, and in the soft aperture of sight, Erin came into view. Her breath hitched. For a long moment she couldn't separate memory from reality. Same jawline, same quiet beneath the eyes, same gentleness that made every silence feel full. But there was something else, something Ethan never had. The exhaustion, the years, the way grief had made him more careful with his voice. "Erin?" she whispered, her throat raw with disbelief. "You look like I know," he said softly. "I've seen the mirror." Tears blurred her half-born vision again. "It's cruel." He shook his head. "No, maybe it's how the world lets people finish what love couldn't." She looked at him, really looked in for the first time. She saw a difference. Ethan's smile had tilted left. Erin stayed centered. Ethan had laughed with his eyes. Erin smiled with restraint, as though afraid to break something fragile between them. And yet, when he reached forward, pressing the call button for her water, she felt the same warmth brush against her hand. "Here," he said, helping her lift the cup. Her eyes stung. "You even sound like him." He smiled sadly. "We used to argue about that. He'd say I stole his voice. I said he borrowed mine." The cup trembled slightly in her grasp. "He didn't die, did he?" Erin froze. "Emma, he's in this," she interrupted, touching the bracelet on her wrist. "Not alive, but not gone either." He lowered his gaze. "You're not wrong." After the accident, the recovery team found fragments of his neural data, his voice patterns, emotion mapping, frequency responses. He'd been integrating them into the prototype. She stared at him. "You mean? The bracelet doesn't just translate vibration," Erin said quietly. "It holds an imprint, a residual sequence of his brain's sound perception. Like a living echo," she murmured. He nodded. That's what Project Echo really was. A way to make memory tactile. To give love a second sense. Emma's breath shook. "So when it pulses, when it blinks, it's not random." "No," he said. "It's responding to you. To your voice, your heartbeat. It's his last way of listening." She pressed her palm against the metal, feeling it hum faintly beneath her skin. "Then it means, he still hears me." Erin didn't answer. His throat worked once, the motion betraying everything he tried not to say. "I've spent years fixing what he built," he said finally. "But when I saw you, I realized maybe it was never meant to be fixed. Maybe it was meant to be found." Emma blinked through tears that caught light instead of blurring it. "You sound like him again." He smiled, quietly breaking. "Or maybe he sounds like me again." They sat there for a long while, the distance between them small and unbearable. Then Emma said softly, "Erin, when I look at you, it hurts. Because I keep wanting to call you his name." "Then call me whatever feels true," he said. She shook her head. "No. If I do, I'll lose both of you." The air tightened between them, fragile as new glass. He whispered, "Then maybe the best thing I can do is remind you I'm real." Before she could speak, he reached forward, gently taking her hand and placing it over his chest. The heartbeat beneath was steady, human, unprogrammed, alive. "This one," he said, "doesn't belong to him." Her lips trembled. "No," she whispered. "It belongs to the one who stayed." The bracelet flickered once, as if understanding. Outside, thunder rolled distantly, soft and slow, and for the first time in years, Emma didn't flinch at the sound. She turned toward the window, her eyes catching the world's outline, the faintest blue of dawn, the motion of leaves, the shimmer of light, remembering her name. He didn't come back. But when the music started, it felt like he never left. A week later, Emma was discharged. The world outside the hospital felt sharper, as if the air itself had been every color seemed a little too alive, too temporary. Erin drove her home in quiet. The city drifted by in softened focus. Wet pavements, coffee signs, morning buses, lives continuing. When he parked in front of her apartment, The silence between them felt almost like comfort. "Are you sure you'll be all right?" he asked. She smiled. "You've already given me back the light. I can handle the shadows." He hesitated, then reached into his coat pocket and handed her something small. "The bracelet? It should stay with you," he said. "It responds to your frequency now. I ran diagnostics. Whatever's inside it activates when you're near." Emma held it carefully, thumb tracing the faint initials etched inside the band. E. "He always said his inventions were half accident, half love," she whispered. Aaron smiled faintly. "That sounds like him." They stood in silence a little longer, two people stitched together by someone else's absence. Then she said, "Come by tomorrow. I think I'll be ready to finish what he started." That night, Emma sat at her piano for the first time in years. The lid creaked open like a door in an old house that still remembered laughter. She placed the bracelet on top of the keys. For a long moment, she simply watched the soft blue pulse reflecting off the ivory. Then she pressed a single note. The bracelet responded, one gentle flicker, perfectly in rhythm. She smiled through the ache. "You still remember, don't you?" Another pulse. She played again, this time forming the first few bars of the melody track 07, the song Ethan never finished. And as her fingers moved, the bracelet began to hum faintly, resonating with each note like a second heartbeat. The air shimmered. Static, soft and sudden, filled the room. Then a voice, not clear, not loud, but there. "Emma, if you're hearing this, it means you finished the song. Don't worry, I didn't haunt the technology. I just wanted the music to remember you, the way light does." Emma's eyes filled. "If Aaron's with you, tell him I'm sorry. He always tried to fix the world, while I just wanted to feel it. Maybe that's why we needed each other. And maybe that's why I need you." A pause. "When you play this, it'll sync the last data packet. It's the complete version of track 07. I wrote it the night I realized love isn't what survives, it's what teaches us how to." Then, a soft laugh, fragile and alive. "The last chord belongs to you, Emma. Finish it for me." The recording ended, and the bracelet dimmed. Emma's fingers hovered over the keys. She inhaled once, then played. Her touch was lighter now, unafraid. Each note carried him, and also carried forward. Aaron appeared at the doorway quietly, watching. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The room was already full of voices. The melody built. Slow and luminous rainfall turned to memory. Sorrow turned to light. When she reached the final chord, she let it linger, trembling like something alive. Then a silence that didn't hurt anymore. She turned toward him, eyes glistening. He said, "The last chord belongs to me." Aaron stepped forward. "Then you gave it back to the world." The bracelet blinked once more, and stopped, not broken. Complete. Emma placed it gently beside the piano keys and smiled through tears. "Maybe love was never about holding on," she whispered. "Maybe it's about remembering without staying lost." Aaron nodded. "And maybe that's how light remembers a name." Outside, dawn unfolded in soft gold, rainlight running along the glass. The music still echoed, long after the last note had gone. Somewhere between the hum of air and heartbeat, Ethan's voice seemed to sigh content. Quiet, endless. "You finished it.